So guys, what's going on? I hope you guys are well. Just to give you some news um, before I go on to the boxing video. My brother Salman's tested positive for COVID-19. So I'm having to self-isolate. He's currently self-isolating in his room. So just stay safe, guys. This is real. You can definitely catch this. A lot of people are seeing in the comments on social media saying it's all fake. It's not. Salman's tested positive. I'm gonna go for a test tomorrow to see whether I've got any whether I've got it whether I got COVID also. So I've got to go tomorrow to get tested. But yeah, just stay safe, people. To get onto the video, I'll talk about Canelo and Crawford. Now there's rumors that Canelo's heading off to the PBC, or he's going to be working with the PBC. We're hearing he's going to fight Caleb Plant. I'm also hearing Terence Crawford is near the end of his contract. Now I don't know whether it's true, it's not, and he may be heading to the PBC as well. Are Canelo and Crawford going to follow Manny Pacquiao to the PBC? And if Canelo and Crawford do go to the PBC, I do think Al Haymon is going to become a very powerful man in boxing, because he's already got a lot of the best fighters in the world, and I just think this would take him to another level, and I think he would kind of almost have a monopoly. All the big fighters would be with him. You'd have Crawford, who's a pound for pound, Canelo, who's a pound for pound, Spence, who's a pound for pound. You got Charlos, you've got Gervonta Davis. You would say that he's got Caleb Plant, you got Benavidez in the super middleweight division. You've got a lot of the fighters who the PBC, Luis Ortiz, Wilder. You've got a lot of the guys, Andy Ruiz. They've got a lot of heavyweights. He would literally, in my opinion, have a strong monopoly where other guys would have one or two fighters. And Bob Arum would be left very thin. Eddie Hearn, he's got AJ and he's got Dillian White, he's got other guys, but really he's left thin, really, compared to what Al Haymon's got. Al Haymon's got the Charlos, he's got, Spence, if he gets Crawford, Canelo, Gervonta Davis. And then remember, he's got Porter, he's got Danny Garcia, he's got Keith Thurman, he's got all of these guys as well. This man's almost going to take over. And then let's not forget, in the middleweight and super middleweight division, right? Everybody's chasing Canelo. So everybody wants to fight Canelo. Canelo's the cash cow. Canelo's the biggest star in that division, in those divisions. So everyone's chasing him. So Al Haymon now would potentially have another fighter in Canelo who's the cash cow, who everybody's chasing. So you're going to have to come to Al Haymon and Canelo to get that fight. And I don't know for sure if Canelo's, but from what I'm hearing, his next fight is against Caleb Plant. So what that means is, I'm not sure if Canelo's going to sign a deal with Al Haymon, but I think he's going to work with Al Haymon. And I think he's going to be very close with Al Haymon. That's what I think, personally. And like I said, that takes Al Haymon to another level, because like I said, all of these guys like Billy Joe Saunders, Callum Smith are going to have to go to Al Haymon if they want that fight. So Canelo, Al Haymon, if Terence Crawford goes along as well, Al Haymon's going to have a very strong monopoly. He's going to have all the best fighters. He's going to have all the big stars, most of the big stars, and I just think he's going to be in a strong position like he was years ago. I think Al Haymon was in a position of power years ago, and then after that, Eddie Hearn kind of came in. He started splashing the cash. Bob Arum was obviously had Lomachenko. Now Tyson Fury's come along, Terence Crawford. But if Crawford and Canelo head that way in the PBC way, because let's not forget, Canelo was a massive star, but he was with Oscar De La Hoya, which made Oscar De La Hoya very relevant. Now Canelo's left Oscar De La Hoya. Oscar De La Hoya's talent is left very thin. And Teddy Atlas was trolling Oscar De La Hoya by saying that, you've been left very thin now. Which is harsh. I don't know whether Teddy Atlas has an issue with Oscar De La Hoya, or maybe they don't get on. But, I've always seen Teddy Atlas taking digs at Oscar. I don't know I don't know why, but yeah, I think Oscar De La Hoya has got Ryan Garcia, Virgil Ortiz, Jaime Munguia. Um, but none of these guys have got a track record which shows that they're going to be like Canelo. We don't know yet. We don't know how good they're going to be. Canelo was a proven superstar. And he's going to one of Oscar De La Hoya's rivals. And if one of Bob Arum's biggest names, biggest stars goes over, and when I mean star, Crawford's not that big a draw. However, this will help Crawford because now Crawford's going to get the fights that he wanted. Now Crawford's going to get the fight he's wanted, and that may mean he becomes a bigger star. Remember that now Al Haymon's with Crawford. If Crawford goes to Al Haymon, now Al Haymon's on Crawford's side, so he's going to give him the fights with Porter, give him the fights with Garcia, give him the fights with Thurman, give him the fights with Spence, Pacquiao, arrest. So Crawford is going to become a bigger star if he moves to the PBC, and the PBC are going to start, in my opinion, to dominate because all of the top fighters are going to be over there. They're all going to be with Al Haymon, and that is not necessarily a good. Listen, it can be a good thing because you can see all of these guys fight each other, but it can also be a bad thing because then you might be left like Crawford was with Arum, where he's a singled out guy, and because Al Haymon's got all the fighters, that guy's going to be left out and he's going to be alienated, and that's what you don't want. So if Al Haymon has majority of the fighters, he knows he can just get his fighters to fight one another. But then there could be a quality fighter that's with somebody else and he just gets alienated, like exactly like Crawford was. And that's not what we want as fight fans. We want to see all these guys fight one another. And hopefully that doesn't happen. Hopefully these guys can start making the big fights. But I do think that if Canelo and Crawford move over to Al Haymon, I think these guys are going to start they're going to basically be in a dominating position. They're going to be in a very powerful position, and like I said, that can also be good because we get to see the fights, but it can also be bad because you don't want one promoter to have a monopoly where he's got majority of the fighters, because then that means if there is another fighter with another promoter, he may get alienated, and that's not good for the sport of boxing. That's definitely not good for the sport of boxing, and it basically a bit like what Crawford is. And I feel like Crawford's been put into a position where it's kind of like when your contract ends, you have to come with us, or you're not going to get these fights. And that's what someone else may face in the future, and that's not good for the sport. As Terence Crawford said himself, there's no such thing as streets in boxing. Boxing's boxing. Boxing's about people fighting one another. There's no such thing on the other side of the street. And I think promoters need to work with one another. It's not. See, there's a lot of politics. Which channel is it going on, and who's getting what, and what that promoter wants that promoter, that fighter wants that. There's a lot of politics, and that gets in the way of making these fights. And that's the thing with UFC. Dana White controls everything. He makes the decisions. He says you're fighting him, and he makes things happen. He doesn't keep the fans waiting. Why are you going to overcook something? And that model's worked for him. That's worked in the UFC. Look how big the UFC's gone. UFC's caught up with boxing. Even don't get it twisted. It's not caught up yet, but don't get me wrong. I think in another 10, 15 years, it may overtake boxing. If boxing carries on being the way it is, UFC may take over because UFC are giving the fans what they want, and slowly there'll be a lot of boxing fans that have become. There's a lot of boxing fans that have become UFC fans, and probably now more into the UFC than boxing. And eventually, the UFC audience is going to grow, and eventually it'll probably be bigger than boxing because boxing is letting the boxing fans down. UFC is not letting their fans down. UFC is giving UFC fans the fight they want to see, whereas boxing isn't. Because of all this politics in boxing, where there's 3 or 4 or 5 different promoters and they all got a different agenda. They've all got different fighters, and they're not making fights with one another because they're all thinking about the risk rather than for the fans. And when you do that, you may be filling your own pockets, but the problem is the fans aren't happy, and eventually it's going to result in there to be a decline in the numbers of viewers because people are just getting frustrated. Like, for example, we've got Brook against Crawford, right? everybody's in. Well, I'm intrigued because I'm a Brit, but really, majority of boxing fans are not happy with that fight. They want to see Crawford in with Spence and all the top guys. They don't view Brook as a top guy anymore. So that's the issue we're having in boxing, that we're not getting the fights we want to see. You know, we're getting fights that we don't really want to see. And that's the issue. And it's about time that that gets amended. Otherwise, like I said, don't be surprised if UFC take over boxing. You know, and I don't know whether you could say it's good news for boxing, the fact that if Crawford... Listen, I don't know for sure about Crawford. I just heard a rumor that Crawford may be going over to the PBC. But we don't know that yet. We've heard those rumors before. We don't know how long the contract with him and Bob Arum is. Is this the last fight under Bob Arum, in the sense that is his contract ending after this? We don't know. We don't know. Bob Arum's going to be left in if Crawford leaves, because we know Pacquiao's left already. Crawford leaves as well, then it's going to leave Bob Arum very thin. He's going to be left with Lomachenko, but he's got Lopez now as well. He has got Lopez, to be fair, so you know Lopez is another star. So that's another fighter that you can say that Bob Arum's got. But again, you don't want to be losing one of the best pound for pound fighters in the world. But again, I don't think there's much Bob Arum can do for Crawford anymore. So it may be best for Terence Crawford and Bob Arum that Terence Crawford leaves, because let's not forget, Bob Arum's having to pay Terence Crawford a lot of money, but the fights that he's making aren't really generating enough money where they're making money on those fights. So until Bob Arum's able to make Spence Crawford, or Crawford, with somebody that's going to do big pay-per-view numbers, Bob Arum's going to be losing money. So does Crawford really make sense for Bob Arum? I don't know. We'll find out. I don't know, to be honest. I don't know whether it makes sense. We'll find out whether Crawford leaves or what happens after, a couple of months. But, these rumors are circulating, but I don't know how true they are. It might be nonsense. But if Crawford and Canelo do go to Al Haymon, then Al Haymon becomes the dominant force in world boxing again, as far as I'm concerned. Because for me, he would have majority of the biggest stars in boxing under his banner. But that's my take. What do you guys make of it? Leave your thoughts in the comment section below. And guys, remember to please like, share, subscribe to my channel. I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.